Hey everyone, and welcome back. Believe it or not, the first tech video shot from inside the new facility, the world headquarters of Baxter's Garage just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that I'm hoping I don't get a tongue lashing for. I've got a lot of friends that are in the cylinder stud business, either in manufacturing, selling, and I know a lot of guys in the business that build engines with high tensile steel cylinder studs. What we're going to talk about today is, are they worth the money? Do you really need them? Quite an interesting topic when you're building your performance Harley-Davidson motorcycle. So stay tuned. Let's talk about studs. Not that's weird. These kind of studs. First off, thanks to all the members that have hung in there with us, and thanks to all you guys, the subscribers, that have been waiting so long for tech videos as I've tried to get this place together and get back into operation. I'm thrilled to announce that yes, we are receiving motorcycles. We're working through our long backlog, and we've got a ton of work to do for all you guys. So all of you that that are on our backlog list, we're going to stay in touch with you and let you know. Receiving a few bikes at a time and start working through the cycle and get this thing back up and rolling. Electrical is done, machines are rolling, and we're making chips, and that's awesome. To today's video topic, again, this is highly controversial, and it's probably one of the most common questions I get during our consultations with customers. When we talk about their engines, their needs, and what they want to do, again, during those consultations, I'm getting to know you, your riding style, your expectations, how you really spend your time on your motorcycle. Details do matter, even down to cylinder studs, believe it or not. I'm even thinking about these things right here. Now, when you build your performance engine, quite often someone is going to recommend or possibly mention switching to a high tensile steel cylinder stud. What gave me the idea to do this video for you guys is I was just popping through some social media site. I don't remember what it is, which one it was, but a very short video from Gale Banks of Banks Performance. You know, he's the guru of diesels. And needless to say, Mr. Banks is very well accomplished and certainly one of the leaders in his field, and is highly respected. The topic of his video was using stock versus aftermarket or high tensile cylinder head bolts and studs or studs when he builds these extreme performance diesel engines. Now understand, I believe in that video, I may be wrong on this, but if I remember correctly, he was building a diesel that was going to come in at somewhere around 1,000 to 1,500 horsepower. Now remember, diesels see an enormous amount of cylinder pressures and very high compression ratios, 15, 16 to 1. The main topic of his video was to explain why he uses stock style cylinder head bolts instead of high tensile strength ones. And I had so much relief, I took a huge deep breath when I heard what Gale Banks had to say. Quite frankly, Gale and I feel the exact same way about it. So despite the tongue lashing I may get from my friends at the companies that sell high tensile cylinder studs and for my friends that recommend them, there is a reason to run them. There is a reason why I would not recommend that you run them. My purpose of this video is to give you information, things to think about, things to research, things to discuss with your engine builder or with us if we are your chosen engine builder. That being said, there's a lot of things to consider, details, things you may not even be thinking about when it comes to deciding whether or not high tensile studs are worth it, should you spend the money, or are they any good. Small details can make big differences. So first off, what I'm holding is in fact a high tensile cylinder stud out of a twin cam. If you were to compare this to a stock one and feel it, flick it, tap it on a bench, you're not going to notice much of a difference. One of the first things you're going to notice is with a high tensile stud, you notice there is no flange here. Typically on a stock style cylinder stud, there would be a flange on one side. When you install that into the case, you torque that down inside the case up against that flange, then install cylinder, head, etc. Typically the high tensile studs, all the ones I've ever seen anyway, do not have that flange. So you would just screw this down into the case and then proceed from there. So let's talk about the characteristics of high tensile steel and what makes it attractive in a performance engine build. First off, a lot of it has to do with yield strength. Yes, the harder metal gets, it can also get more brittle, but that really doesn't play into what we're about to discuss. The idea with a high tensile stud, because of its high yield strength, it does not stretch. It maintains its shape. It takes quite a bit more force in order to deform this stud, to stretch it or elongate it when compared to a lower yield strength, more mild steel like you would see in a stock style cylinder stud. So for all of my friends that manufacture, sell, and all my buddies in this industry that recommend high tensile studs, they are absolutely correct. It is valid. A high tensile upgraded stud is stronger and will not stretch during the operation of the engine when you're doing a performance build. There's no question what they're telling you is true. Is it an upgrade? Absolutely. Here's the flip side. Quite often with upgrades, there can be compromises. And sometimes when you upgrade one component, you can expose the weaknesses of another component. You make one stronger, it can withstand more abuse. But the component it's attached to, can it withstand the abuse? So when we're talking to you about building your custom engines, we're thinking about these things. How are you going to use the bike? What's your expectations? In a racing environment, you want an engine to be as completely tight as possible. There really isn't high mileage expectations. You want everything to hold together very, very well in that performance engine. You want everything to stay tight. So let's think for a minute. We're dealing with air-cooled engines that see quite a bit of thermal expansion. They see very extreme variances in temperatures and lengths and sizes when you start adding everything up. Let's say, for example, you're running your engine down the interstate and it's nice and hot. All of a sudden a rainstorm comes in. That rainstorm can cool the surface temperatures of that engine quite a bit. So you have this constant contraction and expansion of the engine components. You have the cylinder and the head. All right? One of the things that Gail pointed out, which I agree with Gail 100%, and I have followed this theory for many, many, many years as to whether or not I recommend to my customers you use high tensile studs. I do for some, but not for others, based on the information they tell me. One of the things that Gail pointed out in his video was the reason he uses stock bolts and studs, if he's studding one on a performance diesel engine, is that it allows contraction and expansion. Now, keep in mind, we're talking diesels. Yes, they are liquid cooled, but he's also running massive compression ratios. With us, we're not running as high as compression ratios as you would see on a diesel engine, but we are seeing massive variances in temperature. Here's the key point. No question, a high tensile stud is stronger than a stock stud. It will not stretch and move, and it will help prevent things like potentially head gasket leaks or base gasket leaks if it is an extreme performance engine. Here's the trade-off. When you use a high tensile stud, you are now potentially exposing the weakness of the case. As cylinder bores get bigger, spigot diameters get bigger, that wall thickness of the aluminum case we're dealing with up against the stud is getting thinner and thinner and thinner when you bore those cases, specifically on twin cams, but also on M8s if you're going to very large bore sizes, which they seem to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So one of the things we have to think about, if we strengthen the stud, we could potentially be exposing the weakness of the case. We are dealing with aluminum after all. So what a person needs to decide, if I use a high tensile stud that's not going to stretch and for whatever reason, expansion, high compression ratio, high temperatures, I'm in a situation to where this stud is not going to stretch and give a little bit. So I am putting then more pull force against the case. Gail's point in his video is the same point that I'm going to make in this one. In most cases, I'm going to say 90% of the time, for individuals that aren't racing, they just want a good, long-lasting, reliable touring engine, not trying to squeeze every single horsepower or torque that they can out of it. What we're looking for is reliability, flexibility, and allow for a safety margin in that engine build in case it got extremely hot, right? A high tensile steel stud won't stretch and move. Well, that's going to transfer any of that additional pressure from those high temperature, etc. environments to the case, potentially increasing the possibility that you pull or strip a stud from the case or crack the case. Gail's point with his diesel engine blocks are the same as my point, and why most of the time I could recommend using a stock low tensile stud instead of a high tensile stud. Excuse me. I'm going to do this in one take. Ain't that awesome? So Gail's point was it's a heck of a lot less expensive to replace potentially a blown head gasket than it is to replace an engine block. My opinion has always been exactly the same. If you are not building an extreme performance engine and you're not trying to squeeze every ounce of power out of it as possible, you're going to spend most of your time touring with the occasional blip from red light to red light to have some fun and remind yourself why you did your engine build. More than likely, a stock style cylinder stud is more appropriate for you. The reason I say that is there a slightly increased opportunity that you could have a head gasket leak under extreme, heavy extreme conditions? Yes, there is. But then we have to factor in a little bit of risk versus reward. By using a high tensile stud, are we reducing the possibility that this stud may stretch a little bit and maybe over time develop a little bit of a base gasket leak or a head gasket leak? Yes, that is true. By using a high tensile stud, we are reducing the opportunity for that. But at the same time, under extreme conditions, we're also slightly increasing the chance that you could pull this stud out of the case or even crack the engine case under extreme conditions. So when you decide to do your engine build, be it through us or someone else, and when you call us for your consultation on doing your build, this is a conversation we should have. We should talk about upgrading cylinder studs and if it's appropriate for you. There is no right answer to this. Are high tensile studs wrong? No, they're not. But like so many things, you have to think about what is appropriate for you. And that's what we're here for. To walk you through and down the path to muddle through some of the questions and decide if it's worth it to buy high tensile studs or not. In my opinion, I will share with you what I would do personally. Even on FXR 71. FXR 71 is a 10.5 to 1 compression 120. I'm putting 8 pounds of boost to it, and I will be feeding it nitrous. In that engine, I am running stock cylinder studs, not high tensile ones. The same reason I just mentioned for you. I would far prefer to blow a head gasket or have a base gasket leak than I would pull those studs out of the case. And I know if I run a stock stud with a slightly lower tensile, that stud may stretch a little bit. But it's cheaper to replace a head gasket and a stud than it is to pull a case and a crank and time certs and all these other things. So, in the end, is it worth it? It's up to you and how you plan on using your motorcycle. So that's my take on cylinder studs, and to my friends that recommend these things, to the companies that make them, the companies that sell them, I mean no ill intent, of course. I just want people to know, yes, they are worth it. They do exactly what they say they will do. but how you ride your motorcycle determines, and the style of engine you're building is what determines whether or not you need them. Lastly, what is your overall objective? You want to hold it together 100% and know that it's not going to blow that head gasket and run that risk? Or do you want to build in a little bit of safety margin? Something for you to think about. Anyway, that said, we got a ton of videos coming, guys. I've got so much content that I have already recorded. I've got stuff that we did with SATA, and when Tony came down from SATA, us painting the tank for FXR70, we got that. We got Jim's videos getting ready to go. We've got, we're going to talk about oil pumps on Evos and shovel heads, top-end oil conversion kits, some roller rockers, and all that stuff on some of the older engines for you old engine guys. And then we've got a bunch of engine teardowns coming. I think we've had 5 motorcycles dropped off now for our first batch of guys that have been on the backlog. I've got teardowns coming like crazy on those. Then we're going to be building. Then we're going to bring in another batch of guys. We're going to be machining. We've got all kind of wonderful stuff that's going on here at Baxter's Garage. So again, thanks a million to all of our members for hanging in there with us. Thanks to all of our subscribers. I think we're at about 63,000 subs now. I'd like to see 100 before too long, maybe by the end of the year, and that would just be an awesome thing. So guys, thanks for your patience, thanks for hanging in there with us, thanks for your support, your comments, and as I have more time to get things caught up, I'm going to get back on that computer and start answering your comments. One thing that I ask, if you guys could leave a comment below and let me know. I would like to get in the habit of doing a live Q&A like we used to do before I got crazy nuts busy and started doing this move. I would like to do live Q&As again. 1 hour. In the comments, let me know what you think would be a good day and time. Maybe Saturday mornings, you know, or one day during the week, in the evenings, whatever the case may be. I would love to get back into doing those live Q&A again, but I want you to tell me what's going to fit best in your schedule, and I'll read through them. Guys, thanks a million. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care of yourselves and each other. And if you want them, buy yourself some high tensile studs. Have a good one.